So I want to jump back and talk a little bit about Overwatch's 31st hero, their new one, Sigma. I know we all play Overwatch here, some more than others.
Mhm.
I am off again, on again about it. But Sigma, I always get excited whenever I see the new heroes come in to play and everything because I want to get my hands on them. And I'm especially excited about Sigma because he's a new tank, which is great. I also prefer as much as I tell myself that I would love to be a Genji main. I find myself just being Roadhog because I just can't be
Yes.
as good with Genji as I can with the Roadhog. So I'm excited to have a new tank and everything to play with because I feel like for a while it was a pretty good stretch just like support or even DPS. So it was good to get to see the tank class get a little bit more love. Um, so I actually was able to play around with him on the PTR as well, and I like him. He's complicated, but I
Mhm.
like him. Like his new shield thing with how he extends his barrier, where you hold down the right click and everything, and it extends it out for a specific distance. You can like stop it along the way and everything. Learning how to figure that and plan that out right was is it's going to be iffy. And then that his ability where he like sucks it all in and keeps it all to build more shield. He
Mhm.
like pulls in projectiles or whatever, and it builds more shield. And then I just like his main attack too. He like has those cubes that he just throws out. Um, but the big thing and kind of a story of what I more wanted to look about this is in his backstory, which is kind of catching a little bit of flack because it came out this morning actually in an interview with the designers and everything for Sigma that the big character design with him is that he's barefoot when the rest of him is actually all covered in armor. He's hovering above the earth and everything, but his feet are don't have any kind of protection on them. And so they had the where is it? I'm looking at this article. So it's VG247.com is the article I was looking at. Overwatch's Sigma has bare feet, quote, to sell the asylum look because apparently in his backstory in his lore, he in his experiments on black holes and different things, a big accident occurred and it caused him to have a mental breakdown. And this is post that, and now Talon is using his abilities and his talents and his smarts to, to their own will. But so that was like what they chose to be the thing that represented him is that he doesn't have shoes because and a lot of times in asylums basically they don't let people wear shoes due to the threat that potential laces could have. And this is from the character creator or Blizzard character artist Q Fang, who said in to Polygon, he said, "Thanks for your feedback. We decided to keep the feet bare to sell the asylum look a bit more. In many institutions, patients are not allowed to have shoes because they might cause harm with the laces. While Sigma isn't necessarily in danger of that, we felt that having no shoes helped draw that connection." And then they go on to say, I also had iterations of him with shoes on, and it made him a lot more generic. So in the end, we decided to leave him bare feet. That's just what the reasoning internally was, though. I'm sure we'll be making skins with shoes on him in the future. Obviously, that's getting a little flack for that just being tone. Maybe like I was kind of like, that's that. Nah, that doesn't ring sound right, which I feel like is kind of a big misstep for Blizzard, especially with Overwatch, because of how well received the game has been for its excellent portrayal of different ethnicities, sexualities, and people in general. And so I was kind of surprised to see a misstep in this way. Kind of seemed off character for Blizzard
Well,
with
and
this.
I think that's what kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit with this reaction is it doesn't take into the account the whole of what the Overwatch team has attempted to do within the diversity of their hero pool.
Mhm.
They've taken great care. And yes, is this a misstep? I think so. I think that this explanation is a little flippant and it doesn't sit really well with me. But I also think that when you view this in the context of how much Overwatch has tried to do in terms of representation, I don't know. I spend too much time on social media, and so I think I see the brunt of complete overreactions to this. I think this is a perfectly acceptable thing to call out for people, but like I read the main thread that I saw was somebody who was like they made that the argument about, I think it's insensitive, it misses the mark with the shoes thing, but then went into like how his backstory is he's going crazy because he's researching black holes. I love black holes. The thought of black holes give me peace. I'm like, he went crazy because an experiment went horribly wrong
Right.
when he was experimenting with black holes. It wasn't like staring into black holes made him crazy or anything like that. Like, and so I don't know. To me, this is just one of those things like, I didn't see this explanation and immediately think like, oh man, I'm really kind of offended by this. Could it have been handled more sensitively? But I also think this is a little bit of like trying to shoehorn an explanation in for just a character design point that I think they thought looked cool. Like you said, internally, him having shoes on made him look generic, so they didn't want to do it. And so I imagine they just needed a way to explain away the reason that he doesn't have shoes. And maybe even to the point where when people were asking, hey, why doesn't he have shoes on? They were like, oh, we haven't even really thought about that yet, like from a story perspective. And so let's just throw something out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I wasn't necessarily like, oh, this is terrible, Overwatch. Blizzard, how could you have done this? Because I think it's just one of those things. I honestly like kind of thought just because of some circles before we started recording, I said I do freelance videography, and I filmed for a lot of events and everything that have to do with like paleo and different things like that. And like being having bare feet and walking around bare with your bare feet and everything is actually like something that a lot of people are pushing now as being healthy, because it helps you be grounded and stay and like feel more a part of the earth and everything like that. So I kind of assumed he's a gravity, doing gravity, messing around with that for the black holes. Like I thought it had some kind of like scientific reason like that they were going at it. The thought of it being because he was from an asylum, like it didn't even necessarily cross my mind. So when I saw that as kind of the story, that's as more of the backstory, that's what kind of not offended, like you said, but just more, I was kind of like, oh, interesting that's the route they went with it. But that was really just the main discussion point of it. I mean, I know he hasn't hit the main area to play yet. He's still in the PTR for a little while longer. I've enjoyed playing with him and everything like that so far. So it'll be fun to see what the new balances and everything he brings. But what have you been able to play with him a little bit? I think you said, Luke, you had a little bit you got to play with him.
Yeah, but I want to get real quick. I want to get Cody's thoughts on.
Oh yeah.
On the original portion of this.
Well, I don't play it on PC, so I haven't been able to play him on the PTR. So my only exposure to him is the whole feet thing, which I know blew up. Like just people like kind of weirded out by the fact that he was barefoot. Like before the whole explanation, people just were made uncomfortable by it for some reason. I guess people are kind of feet phobic or something. But I think I do sort of think it's a major misstep, not like major, but in a game that's been praised for its representation, at least up until fairly recently, it is kind of it's very insensitive, especially a topic that games have historically not really dealt with that well. Like, of course, we've had Hellblade and we had Sea of Solitude recently, and those really dive into mental illness and try to tackle it, mental illness and depression. I just think like it's the kind of mad scientist driven insane by his experiments is kind of a lazy idea, like a lazy narrative idea, and a kind of a trope that like even if you're looking at it objectively from a narrative standpoint, like probably could have come up with something a little bit better than that, Blizzard. But just there's already kind of a stigma attached to those who do suffer from mental illness, and games have not exactly given that a lot of proper treatment. They've oftentimes it's really easy to kind of person is evil or the mentally ill person is the bad guy in this thing, and I think this sort of plays into that. Although he is being used by Talon, so it kind of complicates it, but it's still like from a glance, it's not a great look on Blizzard's part. I guess I'm just kind of disappointed that there wasn't a little bit more thought, especially because a lot of the backgrounds for their characters are really well thought out. Even if it's not front and center in the game, they do really think about this stuff and have really put proper representation front and center when it comes to their characters. So to see something like this is quite disappointing for me, at least.
Yeah, because it's one of those things we've talked about on over on team chat is just that it's especially with games like Overwatch, Apex, and all this stuff. Like they make the choice to really flesh out the backstories of these
Yeah.
characters. They could just have given us the game and said, "Here you go," but instead they were like, "No, we want to build these universes. We want to build these stories for everybody," and and that's what I think makes these games stand out, especially Overwatch, and why Overwatch caught on so much is because it was not just like, here's the shooter, go have fun. Here's a shooter with all these complicated stories. Here's a comic to go along with it and explain
Mhm.
this a little bit more. And so, yeah, I kind of agree with it, with the effort that they've done into building this out. I agree with what you're saying. It does kind of seem a little light, like they went a little light on Sigma.
Yeah, and I also think like the point that people often bring up with Overwatch is it's a shooter. Like, who cares? Like, you're not really confronted with the narrative or these characters' background directly. So, like, who really cares? But a lot of people do care,
Oh
and
yeah.
a lot of people who often aren't represented in games have found a place for themselves to be represented in Overwatch. And so it's, I don't know. Again, it's kind of disappointing to see them take what has historically been a link between mental illness and villainy and just kind of run with it and not really
Mhm.
kind of complicate it in any significant way. Um, I'll be interested to see if it would be difficult for them to kind of change the design at this point because people would kind of see them as kind of kowtowing to criticism, which may be more worth it in the long run, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I could see him coming out and making a statement about this particular quote.
Yeah,
About this,
I think
but
they
it's
probably.
but from your response, it's less about that particular choice and more about the overall, like, oh well, he's talented, he's a bad guy. The reason he's a bad guy is because of his mental illness. Like, that seems to be what you're taking umbrage with, which I can see and definitely agree with.
Yeah, and I think other people have raised that. It's kind of the same thing that happened with, I mean, speaking of Rage and Rage 2, kind of it's the same thing with equating people with physical disabilities or physical deformities, like a cleft palate,
Mhm.
as being twisted or evil in some way. Kind of a similar thing that games have also struggled with. So I don't know. I think people are just kind of ready to see a different, especially with Sea of Solitude having just come out and tackled depression, mental illness in a really careful and really considered way. It's kind of disappointing to see Blizzard, who's kind of at the height of kind of its developing power as a AAA of AAA game developers, kind of miss the mark with this stuff. But the character, I mean, talking about the character, he does look really cool and like he
Oh
brings a
yeah.
different kind of energy to the tank play, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, and I can jump into the gameplay side of things because I've
Yeah,
spent
please.
a little bit of time playing with him. So, let me just give a quick rundown of his kit. Jerrett kind of gave a little overview of a couple of his abilities. So, his main his main attack is he has like these two like polygonal
look like dice.
orbs, yeah, and he throws them out. They can bounce off of things. They have a specific range that they go before they explode, unless they hit an enemy before that. So they do a massive amount of on impact damage and then some AOE damage as well. But it adds some interesting play because you can play it around shields, bounce it off of walls, get around barriers, and so that's his main attack. I remapped all the buttons, so I don't know what button they're on because his control scheme to me made absolutely no sense when I fired it up. I was like, this makes a lot more sense in another way. But he has like essentially a defense matrix where for a short time he will hold his hand out and block. It's not even really. It's projectiles, but it's really weird stuff. Like he can't eat grav, and we're gonna get into the weeds on Overwatch here for a second. So I apologize if you are not an Overwatch fan. He can't eat grav, but he can eat Roadhog hook. Like he eats flail, like Brigida flail. So there's really no rhyme or reason as to what he can and can't eat. But whatever he absorbs into his matrix turns into a temporary shield, like you get when Lucio drops beat, so it decays over time. He has a projected shield that as long as you're holding down your, I think the default's the right click, it'll go as far as you want. You can recall it at any time and there's no cooldown. You can put it back out, but if it gets broken, the shield has to recharge before you can deploy it again. And like if it's a 1500 HP shield, If it's down to 750 when you recall it, if you deploy it immediately, it's back. It's still at 750. Like it doesn't immediately regenerate. And then his ultimate attack, he has this like you float in the air and you're really vulnerable during it, but you get this giant like AoE ability to lift up every enemy that's standing in it. It holds them up for a second. They can still attack, but you're holding them in a vulnerable position to be able to attack them as well. And then when you drop them, they take half of their max HP pool. So
it's pretty damaging.
Yeah, it's damaging and it's awesome. You feel really fucking powerful. My main issue currently with Sigma, number one, I have three main issues with him. Number one, his control scheme makes no sense in the scheme of like other Overwatch characters. So the way I've done it, I think makes more sense. So I'm gonna just give this to you guys for free. All right. Put his matrix on your right click. Like if you're a diva main, like I'm a diva main, if put his matrix on your right click, it makes a hell of a lot more sense to be there. Put his shield on your E, which is where Orissa's shield is. And then put, he has a boulder attack too. So that's his regular E ability. You press E, it pulls in all of his like this boulder, and then you throw it and it stuns your enemy and deals a buttload of damage as well. So that's his other ability, and that can disrupt like charge, Doomfist, rocket punch, and a couple other things as well. So and put that on shift. And to me, like that's when he started to click for me when I rearranged his settings. So that's my first issue. My second issue is he is slow as hell, man.
Oh yeah.
His movement speed is terrible. And I was really hoping like for a mobile main tank like Winston, people consider Ball to be somewhat of a main tank, but he's really only a main tank if you play around him correctly. And that's not happening at the elo that I play at. So I really wanted someone like a Winston who has a lot of backline survivability, a lot of get in, get out mobility, and that's just not who Sigma is. He's really, 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 really slow. And then the third issue I have is I don't think he's not really a great main tank, I don't think. Like he's got this shield ability, but the shield is on the smaller side. It's decently low HP, and I don't know, it just kind of feels weird to have to play around, but he's not really an off tank either. I think he best synergizes with like Orisa. Maybe Diva. I've seen a lot of people playing Diva with him, but I don't know. I don't know what his synergy is, because all the other tanks have really clear synergies. You know, your Hog Orisa, your Zarya Ryan, Diva Winston. Like, I don't think people have found what his natural synergy is yet, and I don't know if he necessarily has one. So those are kind of my big issues. But you said you've had a chance to play with him, Jerrett. What are your thoughts?
I've like played 3-4 rounds with him earlier today. Actually, it's pretty much all I've got with him, and I do want to try out the new keyboard layout that you were talking about. That sounds way better than what he rolls with. But I do like the ricochet of his main fire. I think that is a lot of fun to mess around. Of course, when you're playing on PTR, everybody's using, so like it was 6 Sigmas versus 6 Sigmas, so it's not the best representation of how he'll play, but it was still super fun, like figuring out how to angle his shots around everything and around the shields, playing off. I could see him paired with the Diva. He could be really well, because you could use his defense matrix shield to like extend it out, because it travels pretty fast too. So you could even use that like paired with a Diva who's using her boost and everything, so you could get some pretty serious ground cover and maybe like push some people out of the way. So I especially see him on payload maps being a really big thing. I feel like he could be pretty helpful there. He's complicated. Like he's a 3-star, right? A 3-star hero. Yeah. So it'll take time, but I'm excited to try him out and to get to mess around with him, because I think he could potentially have a lot of really great playability. And like you said, his ultimate is, it's nice. It's nice.
I think I can't think of another, maybe Blade, but outside of that, I can't think of another ultimate that just makes you feel as powerful as you feel with that ultimate. And it's not as high a skill cap as Blade. Like you have to be really good with Blade to feel powerful with it.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, like if you can potentially lift up all 6 members of the enemy team if you get the right spot and then just slam them all down to the earth. It's amazing.
I'm really sad we're not going to see him in pro play this season, because there's so much bunker being run right now, and oh man, seeing that ult during bunker would be just awesome.
Oh man.
So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see kind of just where the meta lands altogether with 222, but I'm really interested to see how pros are going to use Sigma. I watched a little bit of Seagull stream, him using him, and the shield is cool because it doesn't just extend forward. Like, you can angle it in the air, so like if a Pharah ults you, you can block her ult and potentially kill her by pushing your shield into her. There's a lot of different uses for it. And so, but I just don't know where it's all going to shake out and where he's going to land as far as how much he's being used, especially in a 2-2-2.